generation of Welshmen who fought in the First World War is now long gone. The old soldiers have all passed away. What survives is their first-hand testimony recorded in interviews filmed over the last decades of the 20th century.
We thought that the enemy was going to come over to England and burst and slaughter your mother, your children, the lot.
The brutality of war touched lives not just on the battlefield, but at home too.
Sometimes I'd feel I'm doing something that's going to kill someone or maim someone. But you have to forget that sort of thing, you know.
This is the story of the Great War, in the words of the Welsh men and women who lived through it.
For the first time I realized that I may go die. And I'd never experienced anything like it before. And I was terrified.
By 1916, the midpoint of the war, the naive optimism of its early years was a distant memory. That year's Somme offensive had seen hundreds of Welsh soldiers killed in battles like that at Mametz Wood. On the ground, the conflict had become a long, bloody process of attrition. But the war wasn't just being fought in the trenches. Both sides were taking advantage of a new invention, the aeroplane, to take the fight into the skies. The average life expectancy for a new British pilot on the front was 11 days.
I said goodbye to everybody, and I naturally thought I was going to be killed, obviously. Oh yes, I gave my life to the army, to the Air Force, to the force rather, and I expected to be killed.
Within weeks of joining up, Hubert Williams was flying bombing raids over enemy lines.
The place, of course, was full of smoke and foul air, all the rest of it, you know, and you had pieces of shrapnel going through your aircraft. We were in an engagement and the shell burst with an awful lot of black smoke, and I dived in doing about 140 miles an hour. And I came up and I saw these poor torps in front of me, and of course I just let go to them and they just disappeared one after the other. Well, I didn't know whether I killed them or what happened. They just disappeared. During the war, you're not a human being. Don't forget that. It's difficult to explain it. You are a war machine, and you become a war machine, and you do not think about home or anything like that whatsoever. Behind me was a German. They were coming on again in the second lot. Of course, he fired at me and blew the tail, and of course I had no control. I knew I was going down, so I switched the engines off. I can remember going down, and all of a sudden, bang.
Hubert was dragged unconscious from the wreckage of his plane by civilians from a nearby village. He spent the best part of a year recovering in hospital. Aeroplanes were just one of the new technologies employed in what was the first large-scale war fought between industrialized nations. On the ground, soldiers faced the threat of chemical weapons.
I can remember as well as can be, we were on sentry in the trenches, and we saw this like a garden fire almost, really, bit of smoke coming up from something green put on them. It got into your lungs, in your nose, in your eyes, and into your lungs. There were the two sorts of gas, that lethal stuff that strangled you, and the mustard gas, which blinded you.
Our eyes were sort of burning. We thought it was the smoke from the brazier. And a natural thing to do if your eyes are burning and waking up is to give them a rub. What we didn't know, obviously, that the gas, heavier than air, had percolated down into the cellar. Of course, when we got up into the open air, we found that our eyes were burning, and eventually blindness crept in. Burning kept in parts of our body that were exposed to the gas.
One of the things I saw was men fall, unable to go any farther, unable to breathe. And big, broad men asking in so much pain that they begged passing soldiers to shoot them, to put them out of their misery. I saw it.
I was shipped off across the channel, and I found myself eventually up in St. Luke's Hospital in Bradford, totally blind, lung infection, and blistered. But eventually, after about 4.5 months, I recovered my sight.
Those soldiers sent home from the war included not just men suffering physical wounds, but those who'd experienced psychological breakdown in the face of relentless bombardment. Among them, Rupert Rees's uncle.
By all account, a shell burst right near him, and he was shell-shocked. And he was transferred to Bridgend. When my mother heard the news, she was very upset. And she had to go to see him. And when we got there, we went in this big yard to see all these men walking about with their eyes open. They couldn't see anything at all. They weren't living in this world. Coming back from the hospital, I can remember my mother catching hold of my hand tightly, much to say, "You are not going," catching my hand, going back to the train. I can remember it so very well.
Jack Jones, later a successful novelist, was also sent home suffering from shrapnel wounds and mental trauma.
I was so ill as a strain of 13 weeks continuous fighting, I was sent home to a hospital in Brighton. And then, having got home, I decided that I would do everything possible to stay home, to look after my family, and leave king and country look after themselves. When my wife and children met me on the platform, and my wife tearfully said, "Oh, thank God, will you have to go again?" And I said, "Not if I can bloody well help it, my dear." I was posted to a recruiting station as a propagandist because it was volunteers then. Come on, join up with Kitchener on the board saying, "Your king and country needs you," on the hoardings. And I was posted to a recruiting station in Merthyr. And I was put to speak at meetings, and believe me, I spoke like a man inspired. Spoke trying to get others to go to the war so as not to go myself.
By 1916, voluntary recruitment could no longer provide the huge numbers of men the war effort demanded. That January, conscription had been introduced for men between the ages of 18 and 41. But a small number refused to serve. Many were driven by the religious conviction that killing was immoral.
There was one man in particular who afterwards became my brother-in-law, Ethel Davis, who was imprisoned in Kinmel Bay because of his refusal to take part in war. He could have been excused on national service grounds because he was the son of a farm and could have been exempted, but he wouldn't stand on those grounds, so he was put in jail in Kinmel Park and actually had his nose broken by an officer who knocked him down, and he fell into a trench. Because he was one of our great heroes at the time. My father used to go and see him and try and get him released, but he was there all the time that the war was on.
Some conscientious objectors were spared prison, but they couldn't escape the resentment and anger of the public.
This man who lived in Station Street in Aberdeen owned a repair shop. He had a son and a daughter. Nearby, the old fire station, and across the side of the road, on the other side of the road, was the police station. And although the crowd, knowing now that this man was a conscientious objector, marched down Station Street to get him out of the house and murder him. That was the idea. They'd kill him if they got hold of him. That was the feeling about it all. The police did nothing about it.
Many young Welshmen who didn't object on conscientious grounds were nonetheless reluctant to go to war.
I was hoping and hoping that the war would be finished before I was called up. You may call me a bit of a coward, but I didn't want to join the army because I knew. I could see by the casualty list that so many had died.
Nonetheless, Percy Williams signed up in the belief that as a volunteer he'd have to serve for less time than conscripted soldiers. He was at the front in France when his battalion came under attack from a German artillery barrage.
I was nearly sick with fright. Nearly sick with fright. And then we just had to wait until this started for hours. All hell let loose. Shells were falling, and there was a gas attack before, and we had to put on our gas mask, and the gas mask got covered with a film, and you couldn't see. And then I was faint-hearted and sick, and I felt sick, and I had to spew up my and I know that I was absolutely terrified for hours. One of the chaps came along and said, he says, the Germans have broken through because there was a tank. Well, he said, I've seen the tanks. And he said, we are surrounded. This German came with his fixed bayonet, and I thought he was going to kill me. He came to me, and he shouted at me, halt, 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 and I was petrified. They captured thousands, and I never fired a shot there.
Percy was taken captive and would see out the remainder of the war behind enemy lines. Over 170,000 British soldiers were taken prisoner during the conflict. As the war continued to deprive Wales of a generation of young men, the jobs they left behind were increasingly done by women.
I was a lad girl in the First World War. I was at the Green Farm, right opposite my home. 5 o'clock in the morning we had to get them. We had to milk 100 cows, and then we had to muck out the cow sheds. Then you went home to breakfast, half an hour, then back again. When I was a lad girl, I began to feel, oh, I had £1 a week. I was independent of anybody. Nobody bossing me what time to get up, what fire to light, what coal to put on the fire, running back and call for the cook. There was none of that. I was my own boss, nearly. You know, I was told what to do, go pick stones in the field or cut the hay or plough the field, and I was out there as happy as a lark. I loved it.
As Minister of Munitions, the politician they called the Welsh wizard, David Lloyd George, had harnessed the industrial might of the country. Thousands of women served the war effort in the munitions works.
Penry was a munitions factory making cordite. Now, cordite is used as an explosive for rifles or any firing of guns. Sometimes I'd feel I'm doing something that's going to kill someone or maim someone. But you have to forget that sort of thing, you know. When you're working there, you just put it out of your mind.
Women on the home front looked forward to the occasions when their loved ones returned home on leave. But bidding farewell to them again could prove painful, as the sister of the poet Ellis Evans, better known by his bardic name Hedd Wyn, recalled.
Mi oedd ymrawd I ffwr yn mis Ionawr. Dwi'n cofio fo wedi bod adra am ei lif ola. Oedden ni'n misio rhyw gwneud rhyw sysmant awr a dweud rhyw goodbye fawr ac ati. Oedden ni'n fodlon just gadael nhw fynd a dyna fo de. Ac oedd o'n sefyll fan nhw ac yn gwyddi o pawb na ddistawrwydd mawr I lawr star neb yn unlla. Neb yn golwg. Neb eisiau dod at ei ddweud goodbye na fo'n gwyddi de. Dwi'n mynd rwan. Ond oedd o'n mynd yn gefnog ac yn dim dangos dim I ni bod o'n brydd de. Ond fydda mam wrth reswm yn poeni'n arw. A'n had yn hem.
Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning. Though your lads are far away,
Percy Williams's parents also worried about their son. They knew only that he was missing, and for months were unaware that he'd survived, albeit as a prisoner of war, enduring dreadful conditions.
I was for a couple of months behind the German lines in France. We were always hungry. We simply had a bit of black bread and then a few potatoes. I was down from about 12 stone till about 6 or 7 stone.
As losses mounted, the mood at home changed.
Ar adag honno, y sylweddolwyd beth oedd effaith neu beth oedd ddylynwad ac erchyldra'r hynny. Pan ddechreuodd bechgyn fod yn ôl wedi cael ei clwyfo. A pan hefyd bydda negeseuau telegramma yn cyrraedd y pentra I ddweud bod bechgyn wedi lladd yn y rhyfel. A'r bachgen fydda yn cario'r telegramma. Pan oedden ni'n gweld y bachgen mynd ar fei coch, roedden ni'n ofni y gweitha.
Oedden ni ddim yn meddwl bod dim drwg wedi digwydd I mrawd Ellis. yn y dechreuad. Ond mi ddoth na rhyw ddau o'r pentra wedi cael llythyr o'r wrthwywyn oedden nhw o'r rhyfel. A'r hyn i ddoth i fyny i ddeud wrth yn had. A pan oedden ni wrth roedd yn sgidio wrth y tân, dyna'n had i mewn. A dyna fo roedd y ben nawr o ddechrau crio yn he. Ac o gweld nad yn crio, roedd nhw roed wedi gweld nad yn crio. Fel ydych chi, chneidio crio yn de. A dyna mam yn neidio gwyddi beth sydd fan de. Ond mi ddod o llythyr swyddogol wedyn i ddeud bod o wedi i'w golli.
A month after Ellis Evans's death, an ode he had written under the name Hedd Wyn won the most prestigious prize at the 1917 National Eisteddfod. On the festival stage, the bardic chair he should have claimed as his own was draped in a black sheet. It became a symbol of the sacrifice demanded by the war. The loss and grief that followed in the wake of the conflict touched the whole of society.
But there was a woman that her son was on that train, and he never returned. He was killed. And for years that woman went up at the station waiting for her son. So they said she used to sit there and wait for the train to come in. Terrible thing. Of course, she was a mind had gone. But a terrible thing to lose your mind.
Dwi'n cofio un ffrind i mi o'n i'n nabod yn dda, o wedi colli goes. Ac yn dweud na dau o ddim ar gyfil capal beth wedyn, am bod arweinwyr crefyddol wedi anfon o i'r fath gyflafan.
On the 11th of November 1918, the war finally came to an end.
The armistice came, and I shall never forget that time. I was at Shotton at the works at that time, and we were expecting some news, and at 11 o'clock the hooters started blowing and the bells were starting ringing, and we gave up our work and went home. Got the early train and went home to celebrate.
Dwi'n cofio diwedd yr hyfal, ac fydda pawb yn rhoi baneri ag ati allan, ac, wel, oedd o rhwsyd, doeddech chi'n medru rhoi baneri rhy fath yna, os o'ch wedi colli rhywun, ac o'na lawer iawn wedi colli rhywun.
Some Welsh prisoners of war, like Percy Williams, weren't even aware that the armistice had been declared.
I said, what was that noise in the night? It sounded like firing. Oh, he said, nothing. We didn't realise that there was an armistice until about a fortnight afterwards. We were, of course, absolutely delighted, and we just couldn't believe that our luck was in like that. Because I'd seen quite a few of our fellows dying.
We were very excited when we knew that my father was coming home, and mother was looking forward very much, and she decided that she must have a new suit to wear. He brought us presents, a teddy for my brother, and ornaments for my sister and I. But when he tried to get my brother to go on his knee and make a fuss of him, he was terrified of this strange man in uniform, because he was a mere baby when he left, you see, and he didn't remember my father at all. But we were all very thrilled to be a family again.
The boy I was courting was called up in 1916. And before that, he was, nice, kind, very thoughtful. But when he came back after I found him aggressive. He was very short with people, not like he used to be. I think he resented the war, he resented everything. I think he changed.
Well, I was in the choir, in St. John's Choir, and one of the seniors was a young man named Parker, and he put his age on from 17 to 18, volunteered to join the Navy. Away he went. I didn't see him again for many, many years. When he came back to over there, he'd go to the pub and get drunk. And he wanted to forget all about the boys who'd been torpedoed all round him, screaming in the water to be saved and picked up. But he registered it in his mind. And these comrades were there. It seemed so terrible to leave them, but that's what happened to them. And then he got drunk and drunk and drunk. His father would come down, beg of him, "Harry, come on home. Mother wants you to come." He wouldn't go. Wouldn't go.
For many women, the war had opened up new horizons.
The First War changed women, I think, because the girls, they wouldn't go back to service. Once they'd had a taste of a porter on the railway or bus conductress or in munitions, they didn't want to go back to service again. They were free.
But many who'd witnessed the war at first hand were overcome by a sense of waste.
The age between 17 and 23 or 24 is a lovely time of your life, and you had to be fighting in a war and your friends and hundreds of them being killed, thousands of them being killed. There's no doubt about it that the cream age were killed unnecessarily. What for?
I don't think there should be any wars. I don't believe in them. Although as a soldier, I don't believe in them. Not after what I've seen, anyway.
When I went to France, we were told that it was a righteous war. When the Germans were said God said that God is on our side, and ever since then I was been a sort of a doubting Thomas.
My attitude would now, if there was a big major war, send the MPs. Let them go and fight it amongst themselves.
The First World War transformed society, sweeping away traditional certainties about politics, class, and religion. It left an indelible mark on a generation that had seen friends, family, and comrades make the ultimate sacrifice. Some 35,000 Welshmen died.
Those that didn't come back, that's the people that should be honoured. Those that didn't, they gave their life, and that is it. And they're the people that are worthy of thinking about. They're the people that really did the job.